Guess what, folks? I landed an incredible deal on a vintage van, and the journey to get it was just as exciting as the van itself. Let me walk you through how it all went down. I got a tip about a classic Dodge Ram van from the 1990s, tucked away in a place called Cheongsa Waichung, about 600 kilometers from where I live. That's no short trip, but when you've got a chance to own a piece of history, you don't think twice. So I packed up, fueled the car, and hit the road. The drive was no walk in the park. Rain poured down from the moment I left home and didn't let up for most of the journey. The roads were slick, the visibility was poor, and at times I wondered if I'd even make it. But there's something about chasing a dream that keeps you going. After hours of driving through relentless rain, the weather finally eased up and the skies started to clear. As I got closer to my destination, I could feel the excitement building. When I arrived at Cheongsa Waichung, I was blown away by the sheer scale of the place. It's like a hidden paradise, with vast stretches of land that seemed to go on forever. The air was fresh, the sky was a stunning blue, and for a moment, I just took it all in. It felt like a reward for the long, tough drive. But the adventure wasn't over yet. I still had to find the van. The property was enormous, with winding paths and open fields. So I spent what felt like forever driving around until finally I saw it. There it was, a bold red Dodge Ram van from the 1990s. The moment I laid eyes on it, I knew the trip was worth it. The square front design was rugged and timeless, a throwback to when vehicles were built to last. The color, bright, bold red, gave it a personality of its own. It looked like it had been waiting there just for me. I climbed inside to take a closer look. The seats were surprisingly well kept for their age, though I noticed the back rows had been modified or welded at some point. When I opened the rear door, I found two spare wheels sitting neatly inside, a bonus I wasn't expecting. The leather upholstery had held up well, and the overall condition of the van was impressive for something that had been around for decades. After some back and forth with the owner, I managed to strike a deal. For just 8,500 yen, the van was mine. Can you believe that? A classic like this for such a bargain? It felt like I was rescuing a piece of history. We loaded it up, and I couldn't help but smile as I watched it get ready for the journey to its new home. The trip wasn't just about buying a van, it was about the thrill of the chase. The rain, the long hours, and the winding paths all felt worth it when I finally saw that beautiful piece of automotive history. The van isn't just a vehicle, it's a story, a memory, and a connection to a time when things were built with care and character. It's already got so much personality, and I can't wait to restore it to its full glory. This 1990s Dodge Ram van is a dream come true for someone like me who loves classic vehicles. I'm excited to bring it back to life and share its story with all of you. Stay tuned, because this is just the beginning of a whole new adventure for me and my new old van. Finally home, and the first thing on my list is to pop the hood and assess the situation. The goal? To see if this vintage van can be brought back to life. No time to waste. Let's dive right in. The moment I opened it up, I was greeted by something unexpected. Bird nests. They were everywhere. It's like the van had become a luxury condo for birds. After clearing out the mess, I got to work inspecting the engine. First, I checked the oil. Luckily, there were no immediate issues, but just to be sure, I removed the oil cap and took a closer look. The oil looked decent, but to avoid risking any damage, I decided to remove the upper oil pipe to prevent dirty oil from getting into the engine. While doing so, I discovered yet another bird's nest lodged deep inside. It was massive. I took the time to thoroughly clean everything out. It's clear this van had been sitting idle for quite some time. Once the upper oil pipe was off, I used a specialized high-pressure fuel line removal tool to carefully continue the teardown. With the pipe removed, I decided to test the engine by cranking it, hoping to see some fuel flow. Unfortunately, there was none. This meant it was time to dive deeper into diagnostics. First up, the fuses. Thankfully, all the fuses checked out fine. Next, I inspected the vehicle's wiring, and boy, was it a mess. The wiring looked like someone had thrown spaghetti into the engine bay. Whoever worked on this van before had done a sloppy job, connecting wires randomly without any logical system. The starter motor, for example, had been rewired with its own separate relay. Despite the chaos, the starter itself seemed to be in good condition, but the wiring, completely unreliable. Worse yet, the starter wasn't communicating with the engine's computer system, ECU, likely due to an anti-theft feature. If that's the case, we're in for a serious headache. At this point, I wasn't even sure if the van could reverse properly. It's a real guessing game. Moving on, I decided to remove the fuel tank to check the fuel pump. If the pump is working, then the engine should fire up with the starter. If not, things could get even more complicated. I also took a closer look at the key. It doesn't have a chip, so if the anti-theft system is still active, there's a chance the engine's ECU could be damaged. That would be a worst-case scenario, but I'm staying optimistic. Hopefully the issue lies somewhere simpler, like a clogged fuel pump or a bad connection. Fingers crossed. As I worked, I couldn't help but notice more bird nests. These things were everywhere, in every nook and cranny. This van had clearly been abandoned for years, becoming a cozy home for the local bird population. After closing the hood, I turned my attention back to the wiring. While most of it seemed intact, there were still unresolved issues that made the process incredibly frustrating. Fixing wiring problems is like solving a puzzle where every piece is missing or mislabeled. It's enough to make anyone lose sleep. But there's a unique kind of joy in this challenge. Restoring an old vehicle like this is a labor of love. Every small fix, every part brought back to life, feels like a little victory. Sure, it's frustrating at times, and yes, it can be exhausting, but it's also incredibly rewarding. This van has seen better days, but I can already imagine it on the road again, back to its former glory. The journey to restore this van is far from over, and there's still plenty to do. From fixing the fuel pump to resolving the anti-theft issues, it's going to take time, patience, and a lot of determination. But that's the beauty of working on old vehicles. It's not just about the destination, but the process itself. With every nut and bolt, every cleaned up bird nest, I'm getting closer to bringing this vintage van back to life. Here's to the next steps in the journey. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. When restoring a vehicle like this, the right parts are everything. The first major issue was the fuel pump. It absolutely had to be a high-pressure gasoline pump. Nothing else would do. After searching, I found the perfect one. Along with it came a bag full of fuel filters, all ready to go. This van is equipped with a naturally aspirated V8 engine, and I could already imagine the powerful sound it would make once everything was running smoothly again. So, I rolled up my sleeves and got to work installing the new pump. The first step was to deal with the fuel tank. After sitting unused for so many years, the fuel had degraded and turned into a sticky mess. The entire tank needed to be drained, thoroughly cleaned, and filled with fresh 2023 grade gasoline. Think of it as giving the van a treat, a taste of something new to get it back on track. Once the tank was cleaned, I carefully installed the new fuel pump and double-checked every connection. But I wasn't done yet. An engine that's been out of commission for this long almost always has carbon buildup, so I stuck to my usual process. I applied a carbon cleaner to help break down any gunk and get the engine back to its prime. With the fuel system and engine cleaned and prepped, it was time for the big moment, testing the system. I reattached the fuel lines, powered up the pump, and checked for any leaks or blockages. Everything looked good, and fuel was flowing like it should. It was time to turn the key. I cranked the ignition, and the engine roared to life. For a brief moment, it felt like victory, but then it sputtered and stalled. I tried again, but this time there was no response. That's when I realized there was an issue with the wiring. The ignition system was a tangled mess, with poorly connected wires that didn't make much sense. After tracing the lines, I found the culprit, a loose ignition wire. To fix it, I ran a direct connection from the ignition to the starter relay, bypassing the mess entirely. After some careful adjustments, I tried cranking the engine again. This time, everything worked like a charm. The engine purred steadily, and I couldn't help but smile. The van was alive. I couldn't resist taking it for a short test drive. As the van rolled forward, I could feel the potential hidden beneath its rough exterior. However, stepping inside the cabin was a whole other story. The interior was absolutely filthy. There was junk everywhere. Trash, dirt, and even remnants of bird nests scattered throughout. It was as if the van had become a cozy retreat for wildlife over the years. Every inch of the interior screamed for a deep clean. The cleanup process wasn't quick or easy. It took days of scrubbing, vacuuming, and clearing out every nook and cranny. I discovered bird nests not just in the cabin, but also in the engine bay, on the chassis, and even around the fuel tank. It was a mess, but the satisfaction of seeing it all come together made every second worth it. Slowly but surely, the van began to transform. After more than a week of hard work, the van was finally looking like its old self again. Its oversized frame, classic boxy design, and clean white paint made it the perfect candidate for something unique. I'm thinking of turning it into a farm vehicle, or maybe even giving it a custom interior for longer road trips. There's still more to be done, but the progress so far has been incredible. Restoring a van like this is more than just a project. It's a journey. There are moments of frustration and doubt, but the joy of seeing it come back to life makes it all worthwhile. This van has gone from a forgotten relic to a functional vehicle, and I couldn't be prouder of the progress. There's still work ahead, but I know this van has plenty of stories left to tell. For now, it's ready to hit the road, and I can't wait to see where it takes me next. The exterior of the van is finally sparkling clean, which means it's time to move on to the next big task, the interior. If there's one thing about old vehicles, it's that they don't age gracefully on the inside. Years of use and neglect can leave behind dirt, grime, and odors that make stepping inside a real challenge. This van was no exception. It was messy, smelly, and in dire need of a deep clean. To start, I reached for my trusty bottle of Goodwise's antibacterial and deodorizing spray. This product is a lifesaver for clearing out stubborn odors caused by built-up bacteria and old grime that accumulate over the years. The process is simple but effective. First, I opened the spray bottle and started the engine. Then I turned on the interior air circulation system to let the spray reach every corner of the cabin. The results? Fantastic. The light, fresh scent was a welcome change from the stale, musty smell that had been lingering in the van for who knows how long. While the deodorizer did its job, I got to work on the rest of the interior. This meant clearing out all the random junk that had been left behind by the previous owner. Some things were worth keeping, but most of it was just trash. The dashboard, the seats, and every other surface got a thorough wipe down. The van was starting to feel like a new space again, but there was still plenty of work to do. One of the biggest challenges was dealing with the modifications made by the previous owner. The rear of the van had been converted into a large bed. While it might have been practical for them, it just didn't feel right to me. It looked awkward and out of place. I decided to restore it to its original state, which meant removing the bed and reinstalling the rear seating. It took a lot of effort, but after a full day of hard work, the sofa and seating were back in their original configuration. Seeing the space return to its classic look was incredibly satisfying. Take a look at it now. It's like a completely different vehicle, with the interior fully cleaned and restored, and the exterior already shining like new. It was time to test the engine once again. I turned the key, and the 5.9-liter naturally aspirated V8 roared to life. The sound was pure magic, powerful, steady, and exactly what you'd hope to hear from a classic engine like this. Hearing it run so smoothly after all the work was incredibly rewarding. This van, a classic from the 1990s, has come a long way since I first got it. It's not just a vehicle, it's a piece of history, and being able to restore it feels like bringing that history back to life. From the filthy, cluttered interior to the modifications that didn't fit its character, every detail has been addressed. Now it's ready for its next adventure. Restoring an old vehicle like this is more than just a hobby. It's a labor of love. Every bolt tightened, every inch cleaned, every piece restored feels like a small victory. It's not always easy, but the satisfaction that comes with seeing it all come together makes it worth every moment. This van is now ready to head out to the farm, where it will have a new purpose and a fresh chapter. Thank you all for following along on this journey. Your support and encouragement mean a lot, and I'm excited to see where this van will take us next. The story between me and this classic van is far from over. Stay tuned for more adventures to come.